Good evening, everybody. This is Joanne with For Better For Worse Dog Training. Welcome to Sunday night resource guarding. So let us know that you're out there. Let me know that you're out there. Nancy was at my place teaching a seminar today, so she is almost home. So she should be joining us in the next 5-10 minutes or so. So tonight we wanted to talk about resource guarding. So what is it? What causes it? What are things to look for? So just kind of want to make sure okay, there's Karen. I just wanted to make sure people were out there. So what is resource guarding? I think one of the very first things that you want to notice about resource guarding is it doesn't necessarily mean it's a resource that you think is important, right? So it's not always food. It's not always a toy. That can be pretty common things. I think food is very common. However, there are dogs who guard their owners. I have one of them. My very sweet Vishla, when the other dogs come around, he can get a little growly if I'm petting him or, we're having some snuggle time. So I have to be kind of careful about that. Toys, some dogs will resource guard really random things, socks, it just whatever is important to your dog in that moment. So always understand that it's not necessarily the things that you think that it might be. Hi, Peggy. Hi, Judy. Hi, Sue and Deb. So Labs and Goldens try to come up to say hi. Doug got nasty. Yeah, Lynn. So, some of that little protection or resource guarding, depending on if something happened, was he really guarding you or was he a little nervous around the other dogs? So that's always a question to ask as well. Since you're in a dog park. Hi, Alicia. Hi, Tyrone. So for you guys just joining us, just letting you know, Nancy's coming. She's on her way home from a seminar at my place. So, all right. So with the resource guarding, again, it's not always people. Can be people or items. Okay. And it can also be towards other dogs, or it can be towards people, right? So we were sort of looking up some studies and looking at dog bites, right? And I think really small children, what did they say? The study said children under 6 years old, okay, they did a record of bites to 111 children. Okay, so the children that were less than 6 years old were most commonly bitten in association with resource guarding. Okay, where other children, so that was 44%, 23% of other children that were older were bitten because of territory guarding. Okay, and when we talked about resource guarding, it's 42% was food. Okay. And it was also familiar children. So usually children in the home, children that the dog knew. And the territory bites were usually unfamiliar children. So that was 53%. Okay. So it's interesting to know what your dog is trying to protect. Okay. I think, resources can sometimes turn over to territory that's a little bit different. But if you have that fence and the really cute dog that the kids like to stick their fingers in, right, you can have some issues there as well. But tonight, I think we're going to talk more about items, things that the dog really, really wants to protect. Okay. So one of the big keys here that I have noticed, and I know Nancy has too when we talk about it, most dogs that have resource guarding issues are not confident dogs. Okay. And what do we mean by that? So when you take a dog that's really pretty confident in its space, in itself, you get some of these testing behaviors with other dogs. Okay. And we're talking dog-dog relationship now. So if you have a dog and you bring home a young puppy. A lot of times what you'll see is that adult dog will have something, let's say it's a bone, right? Or a toy. And they'll have that and they'll set it out in front of them, usually a foot or so. And so the puppy will say, oh, and they come kind of bounding up. And before they do that, the adult dog is going to start throwing out some signals to them, right? This is the nice, confident dog that's going to teach other dogs about resources. Okay. And so usually they'll give them a little bit of a stare, right? Like, think twice, don't do that. And if they don't heed that advice, a lot of times you get maybe a little lip curl, you get a little growl, something really kind of quiet, like maybe think about it. Don't take that. And if the other dog is, again, not heeding, right, then that's where you can get, they'll kind of rush up and charge at them a little bit. But again, none of that is really aggressive. It's trying to tell the other dog, and again, it's usually younger dogs with an older dog, okay? But they're trying to kind of tell them, this is still mine, right? So resource guarding is a normal behavior, okay, in dogs. Very normal. So the rule usually is, if I have it or it's still within my space, it's mine. Even if it's not in my mouth, okay, that is still my general area. So you're not allowed to come up and steal things that are there. That's just general dog rules. So when we have these young dogs, again, puppies are classic, right? Because they're like, ooh, I want that. And they don't know the rules, so they'll kind of come bounding up. If they're real young and you have a really confident dog, sometimes they'll allow them to take a toy out of their mouth. If your dog's chewing on a bully stick or something like that, sometimes they'll allow the puppy to have it. That's all learning. It's all learning kind of how to share, how resources work. But then you also get those teaching moments where they say, that's not yours. You cannot have that. And so they'll start throwing out some signals. So when we talk about the guarding part of resources, okay, this is where it's usually the not so confident dogs. So a very confident dog will say, yep, that's mine. I'm going to set it in my space. You're not going to take it because I'm fully aware this is my space. So the dogs who are not so confident, what you start to see is they kind of hover over things and they freeze and they're throwing out all of these big, don't you take my stuff. Don't you think about it. And you start to see all of these kind of bigger behaviors. They're worried that another dog is going to come and take their stuff. Okay. You see the same types of behaviors when they're worried that humans will take it. Okay. So if when you first get the new dog, right, a lot of people will feed out of their hand or, kind of walk by the bowl. We're testing dogs. And so, when you start seeing a dog that's voraciously eating its food and you come walking up and they stop eating and they kind of freeze and, they're looking at you out of the corner of their eye, those are signals, right? They're very uncomfortable and worried about you around their food. Okay. One of the worst possible things that you could do for a dog like that is say, no, right? And you reach in and you steal that resource. Okay. The reason why that's bad, right? We don't want them to show those behaviors, but the reason why it's bad is you have now confirmed their fears. When you come around, I really should be worried about that resource because I'm probably going to lose it. Okay. And so you can see how when we steal things from the dogs, we make it worse. So a better way, if you have a dog like that, and it's safe for you, I do like, let's say they really like bully sticks or bones, and you start to see some of those behaviors where they kind of cover things up and they kind of growl at you a little bit. It's really great to hold on to that item and allow the dog to kind of chew it with you so that there's a sharing process there. Good evening, Mrs. Reyes.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Oh, my goodness.
Look a little windy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a Russian. So.
Right. So we were just talking about sharing resources with dogs and humans, and how it's not so great to take that, because that confirms the dog's fears, that they really should protect their resource, that they might lose it. So
Right.
I like to hang on to bully sticks or bones if I feel like a dog has a problem. We can share. I'm not going to steal it from you. You're not going to steal it from me. We can have a lovely coexisting moment, right, where we're sharing things. And that sort of helps curb the dog from worrying about it so much. If you do that a lot, they kind of calm down a little bit. Like, you're not going to steal it. I don't get it to myself, but you're not going to take it. And so they tend to share the space with you a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Well,
right?
And this topic is near and dear because I do have one dog that, well, she doesn't anymore, but she was a resource guarder. And when I got her, I do drive. No, I don't drive fast, Pat. I drive like an old lady. That when I got her at 8 weeks, she was already showing signs of resource guarding. So, so she did have that and has that issue. But I don't want to say she has it, because it's no longer a worry or a problem at our house. She does pretty well, and she doesn't guard from us anymore. But the potential's there. And the other reason I picked this topic, Tango, stop. The other reason I picked this topic is because in all of my years of working with behavior issues, this has been the least successful one for me. I've had the least success. I've managed dog-to-dog aggression, dog-to-human aggression, all those problems. And this, by far and away, has been the most challenging one, and the most difficult one, and the saddest one, because when I mean not successful, it means usually that the dog ended up being euthanized, which really stinks. So that's why I was like, this is something that because one of the problems with some of the issues, you can kind of know why it's happening. We have no how some dogs resource guard against people and others don't. We don't know why that is. It's hard to. There's no formula to say this dog's going to resource guard and this dog doesn't. We just don't know.
Well, what I did share with these guys is that in my experience, right, the dogs who are resource guarders are very low confidence dogs.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
They are not the strong, whatever, walking through life like nothing bothers them. They are very worried about other things in life as well.
Yes, because my little Rizzo is absolutely worried about a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. So Judy, how long do you share the item? It depends on you, but I would end it by giving them a treat and taking it away. So the end isn't always they get nothing. You can give them a treat and it ends it, right? Ends the session. And you can do it for as long as you want to hold it, right? I mean, I guess I don't, there's not a real limit. And the other thing is, you really want to be careful. After a while, it's not a problem anymore. So you want to make sure you're just not being a high-priced bully stick holder after a while.
Yeah. If you drop it or they take it away and they poke you with it, yeah, that's not, you're good. Then stop doing that. But
like, you should take it and hold it.
Yeah, so right. Careful. It's hard. It's hard to hold things. We had a day of dogs that were like, I need people for that. So, yeah. But I think one of the things that I do want to give as a caveat, though, Judy, if you're going to do that exercise, it works really well. Like, I like it. However, if this is something new that you're just starting, don't start a movie and just, I mean, because the dog can kind of, as it gets closer to your hand or as you shift, you know what I mean? The dog can change, right? It's minute by minute for the dog, and they can at some point decide, I don't want to share with you anymore. And if you're not paying attention, I would hate for something to happen to somebody, right? So this is not something where you can just hold it and check out. You have to really keep checking in and make sure it's okay for the dog.
Right. And so with resource guarding, we're going to address both. There's resource guarding against people and resource guarding against other dogs. Two completely different things.
Right.
So and one dog can have resource guarding issues with humans and not with dogs, or with dogs and not with people, and they don't mix together. Either they do or they don't. It doesn't. If they're resource guarding against people, the chances are pretty high they're going to resource guard against other dogs too. But one doesn't cause the other, right? There's none of that. And so we'll talk about the people thing, because again, that's the most difficult and the most challenging. And usually it's food. And Joanne we were talking about a study that dogs that showed resource guarding tendencies in the shelter don't necessarily show it in the adoptive home. So it really depends on where it's adopted and who gets it and all that. So I'll give you a quick rundown. And I also, the younger you catch resource guarding, the easier it is to fix it. Right. Quite honestly, the younger you get it, the younger you find it, you come across it, the better. So, for example, Rizzo was 8 weeks old, and I had and around that same time, I had a Rottweiler in my class, 8 weeks old also. I was talking to the owners. I had given him a chewy, like a small chewy, because it was a puppy, and I moved my foot, and what I noticed was he froze, right? It was a she. She froze, and when I moved my foot, and I thought, that's unusual behavior for a puppy. So I was like, okay. So I tested it again, and sure enough, the minute I moved my foot in any direction, she would freeze because she was starting to guard that. So they were talking about all kinds of things to train for, and I said, everything doesn't matter. This matters the most. We have to get the dog, because that's a big dog to have resource guarding issues. Okay. So Joanne's idea, the holding it and sharing it and all that's definitely part on the protocol. The other thing is, when you pass by food, you should toss in a treat as you pass by, and reduce the intensity around food, because people tend to get like all focused on it. And then the dog's like, oh, I really, because if you think about it, if you focus on it, so is the dog, right? And then it makes it, more challenging. So those are two things. Go ahead, Joy.
Yeah. Well, I just want to stop you for just 1 second, because you said two things I wanted to touch on. One is, if you tuned in last week for Lisa, when we were talking about assessing dogs, one of the things that she mentioned was assessing for resource guarding in the shelters, right? And she had mentioned what they found was very weird when they test, because humans do that with new dogs, especially non-puppies, right? If you get a new adult dog, right, you don't just walk up to their food bowl and grab it. Most people have that creepy, right, really slow grab, and that to a dog, it's worse, right? Because you're nervous, which is why you're doing it, which makes the dog a little like, what's happening? So that makes a difference. So when Nancy mentioned tossing food, it literally is, I am on the move, and boop, I toss some food as I walk by. I'm not stopping. I'm not putting any pressure on the dog to handle me near it. It's just, hey, when the human comes near you, magical things like, chicken breast appear in your kibble. Okay. And I forgot what the other thing I was going to say was, so go ahead. It's been a long day.
Yeah. I wanted to show, there's a really great video on of shelter that did a nice job of teaching of teaching the dog how not to resource guard. It was really, really well.
Yeah, while she's looking for that, Alicia, yeah, a dog can pick one person for resource guarding. They absolutely can. And I think a lot of times they do. We don't normally see it in a whole family. It is usually one person that they pick.
And normally it's children, right? Normally it's children that get bit than grown-ups, right?
Yeah, and I think the kids normally get bit over items, right? Food is
yeah.
Yeah. when they pick somebody to actually guard against, it's usually one person in the family, right? A lot of times it's the person that spends the most time with them or feeds them or, is the most interactive with the dog.
Right. Okay. So I'm looking for the video and some of these methods are terrible. So one of the things, so Joanne, could you go over what you don't want to do?
Yes. Please. Yeah, I sort of mentioned just briefly before you got here, but yeah, we don't want to make a huge deal about it. We don't want to cause a ruckus. We don't want to steal things from the dog, right? All of those things. Remember, if a dog is worried enough to guard something, I don't want to steal it, okay? And I want it to be as low key as possible, right? It's sort of like that spider on the wall, right? If you're like, oh my gosh, there's a huge spider on the wall, right? And as I'm having a conversation with you keep kind of looking at it. I'm going to look at it too, right? So, you just want to kind of, it's not a big deal. I can have it. You can have it. So you just don't make a huge to do, and definitely don't grab the dog, scruff the dog, pull the dog off, yell at the dog, right? You definitely want to let them know, steal it from you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if some of you have seen one of Caesar's videos on that resource guarding lab where he got bit. Don't do that.
Yep.
Because that was and you could look it up. You could totally look it up on YouTube because it's there. Anyway, I cannot find that. Lovely. There was somebody at a shelter that did a beautiful job working on the resource guarding, because what happens is you pass by, you toss the treat, and over time the dog will look at you with a lot of anticipation and hope, and it's a different look than a dog that's like, okay, here she comes again, right? The dog will look at, it'll change, because basically you want to change the way the dog feels about you coming near their food or their item, right? Because I did that with chewing too. Sometimes I gave Rizzo stuff to chew, and I'd walk past and drop something yummy while she was chewing, and she'd be like, oh, that's great, and she'd chew that. And so after a while, my presence around her resources was a good thing, because good things would happen when I was around and she was chewing. So it really helped her change the way she felt about it. And that's one of the ways it made a very long lasting change. Like, she doesn't guard, like we can take anything away from her. The only thing she might still do is posture. She might be like, wait a minute. You could see she's a little conflicted, but I'm like, it's okay. And she'll get a treat and she's fine. What you don't want to do is show them the money then so they can drop it, right? Because then guess who's getting trained? Not the dog, because the dog is still guarding. She just trained you to just, pay up. And sometimes, and that doesn't always work either. If the resource is high enough, they're like, forget it.
Or it just teaches the dog to grab that food, grab the resource a whole lot faster once they gobble down that food, right? Anytime you're trying to, right. You put pressure on them like that, like, oh, do you want this? How about this, right? We're making that so much more weird than it has to be. And so as soon as you start to add that pressure, it's worse for the dog.
Yeah. Toys. So, and the other thing is you're going to teach your puppy or your dog how to drop it. That's a really important skill. Dropping it is a good thing. You drop it, good things will happen for you. So Ronnie, definitely, to prevent it, do the same thing. Pass by her bowl, drop in a good treat. When she's chewing on something or whatever, drop in a treat. So your presence is going to be fantabulous all the time. And that way you don't have the problem. You don't get that problem. And again, I wish we could figure out how to tell which dogs are going to guard or not. Because I've had quite a lot of dogs. I had one researcher. Fortunately, she was a 12-pound dog, but but even though I've gone through this whole process with all of my dogs, I drop food in. I always make my being around them and around food a really a wonderful thing and a good thing for them. But so Ronnie, everything that you would do to train it out is what I would do to prevent it. And that way, you'll never have the problem. And even if you don't have it, it's not a don't worry about it. Just make your presence around the resources a wonderful, beautiful thing. So
yeah, now that doesn't always necessarily work with other dogs. So just letting you know, right?
We're just talking human to dog right now.
Human to dogs. Yeah.
Human
So
to dog, human. We'll talk about the dog to dog thing later, but a little bit later. But this is only I'm talking about because I'm gonna be honest with you. Dogs guarding from other dogs is a pretty natural thing, but the people thing and it's hard because they are living in our world, and what would be appropriate and acceptable in the wild or with other dogs is not acceptable with people, right?
Right.
So that's why it's like this is really dog to dog. Mary says, my friend brings her dog over to my house. He plays well with my dogs, but after play, we're all relaxed in the yard. One of my dogs may find a stick to chew. Her dog will carefully watch my dog and take, at some point, advance on my dog, bark, and take the stick away. Yeah, he wants it. Well, and it's more like, I want that toy. Well,
or I would even go a little deeper on that and be like, what does he do with the stick when he takes it?
Right.
Like, does he want that stick, or does he take it and drop it somewhere else? Right. Because this is getting a little anthropomorphic. It really is. But dogs do learn. Right. So if potentially your friend doesn't let her dog chew on sticks, right, and takes the stick from her dog, dogs can actually do mimic behaviors, right? And you're not supposed to have that. Give that to me. And they'll go put the stick down. Nobody can have that stick.
Yeah, he chews it. So he is choosing. He's taking it away to chew it.
Okay, then yeah.
Yeah. So then, Mary, I would probably recommend that he gets his own stick, which I don't know if that's going to work because a lot of time it doesn't. A lot of times, like, no, I really want the stick you have.
Yep.
It's like children. I really want that. So you might try that, right? Give him the stick that you're, give him another stick that he can have. When you start to relax, just give him his own stick before, things get funky or they can have their own thing.
And Alicia, your only dog, the only adult is not an alpha dog. We had a boxer that was resource guarding my girlfriend, and Nazar were getting into a fight, but it seems the fight's never over you. Yeah. So, I mean, it can definitely be, if you're, if Nazar feels like he needs to protect your girlfriend or, whatever, it's hard to tell what the dogs are thinking. But if you know that it's not you and it's her, like, you're going to want to try and not let them both come up at the same time, not let them both get pet at the same time, right? One has to wait and be patient while the other one comes around. It's easier said than done. But one of the biggest ways to help this is to prevent those situations from happening, right? I remember one of the first times I was at Nancy's, right? You had Jive and Chotch. And it's food, right? They're not necessarily resource guarding, but they're very aroused over food. Mm-hmm. And so, she's like, don't give them treats at the same time over the gate. Like, just don't do it. Because she's trying to prevent something bad from happening, even though it hadn't. Right. Right. So the prevention piece is really the key to things not getting worse if you've seen it. Okay. Right.
Because, so Judy, how does Rizzo respond to my other dogs? She guards from my other dogs. And Joanne and I were just talking about that. She guards from my other dogs, and my other dogs are like, I don't care. I don't want what you have. So nobody cares. So it's not a problem at my house because my other dogs don't care what she has.
She needs her own little episode of Doggy Hoarders. She comes out and gets a toy and she takes it under the desk, and then she'll come out and get another one, take it under the desk.
Yeah, but it's not a problem because my other dogs don't want it and they don't care.
Right.
So it's fine. So there's no issue with that. And then that goes back to so Judy, she does, that's why I think it's more common if they guard against people, they're going to guard against dogs, but not always, it's not always that way. Sometimes they don't. In my case, she does. But she's a very low confident dog too. So, and toys. Yeah, Carrie, so Carrie, I would definitely teach your dog to drop it. Right. And also if it's just with you or is there other dogs around or whatever, because that changes the mix a little bit. If she guards it with you, is one thing, or if there's other dogs that want the ball, that's another thing, right?
Mhm.
So just
And I know that dog is super food motivated, so I would absolutely start to teach a drop it with a treat. And you drop it, you get the cookie, I throw the ball, you get the ball back, you come back, I give you a treat, you drop it, I throw the ball, right? So we're taking the conflict away from her. You're always getting that ball back.
right,
Something super great for trading it with me, and we're playing fetch. So you're just making it a really good situation all around.
right.
Let's see.
People. It's people. She guards the toys from people.
Okay.
So then I would definitely teach her to drop it. I would actually add to that, drop it and back away. So you're going to teach her a backup first, and then a drop it, and then you're going to put those two things together. So you're going to back up, you're gonna drop it, you're going to back up. I'm going to take the toy, and then I'm going to give it back to you. And then you would do it with one person, get that straight, and then, do it with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Rehoming the boxer. Yeah, Alicia. And Harley has a great home. But yeah, and I think, to be honest, in that situation, it was a resident dog and a new dog. So that presented a whole nother set of issues too. Nazar and Nuka and Harley, that bringing two homes together was very challenging. So it wasn't only guarding, it was a lot of other things that was causing some of that issue. So for sure. Okay, so go ahead.
I was just gonna say, with all these questions already, guys, nothing's impossible. Okay, well, but overall, nothing's like impossible. But I think Nancy, you'll agree with me when I say fixing the dog human piece it's not easy, but it's a whole lot easier than fixing the dog piece, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty tough if you get a new dog and you see any inkling of this at all with you or with other dogs, don't wait and see where it goes, because dogs, when they learn what works for them and how to protect and how to back other people or other dogs off, they will continue that behavior. So the more that you can prevent it and step in before it gets bad, the better chance you're going to have of fixing the behavior.
Yeah, because the truth is, for example, with other dogs. So this is one way, if it's a food issue with other dogs. So a little bit similar to the people thing. If you have a dog that guards food from other dogs, every dog should have their own space to eat at, right? If they're not comfortable eating around other dogs, they need to have their space. So it really depends. Like my lab and Cha-Cha and my lab incredibly are really good about, they eat in the same room and it's not a problem. And the lab respects the food thing. But I also don't have all my dogs eat all together all the time, because I have 5 dogs. So I set that up where they have their own space. So, if I had a problem with that, what I would do is I would have one dog. They would eat. If I had one dog, I would have the dog on the other side of the gate, and they would have their food, and there would be good things happening. I would be dropping treats, and it would be again, you want to change the way they feel. It would be something positive happening while they're eating and while the other dog is near, so that they wouldn't want to guard it. And then eventually, if you want to eventually have them together, but many times it's just easier and better. It's like nobody wants to eat when it's like, are you going to eat that? Are you going to eat that? I really want that. Nobody wants to eat in that situation. So having their own quiet place to be able to enjoy their meal is a good thing, right? So that prevents some of that issue. Or if you're there, then if you have no choice and they have to be in the same room, then you want to make sure that the dog that's not comfortable has extra goodies, and you can go walk and forth between the two bowls and they can have goodies. And good things happen when people are eating, which means that you have to supervise the feeding time. You can't just walk off and go have a cup of coffee and then,
hope it goes well.
Yeah, exactly. You have to manage it, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning.
I always feel, I giggle a little bit because I always feel like, right, there's like the theme from Jaws starts playing, Donna. And, I mean, I know in my house, I think Nancy's lab is very respectful of her own dogs, but boy, she's definitely right at that gate. Like, you done? I can lick that. You ready? And so it's just kind of funny. I do. Yeah. I feel like that little shark fin, just lab fin comes sailing on by. So, oh, John.
Yes, she's very hungry. Okay, so food is one thing. So also we can become resources. So here's the thing: resource guarding. Resources is what's important to the dog, right? In a stick, food, a person, an area, a couch. I had a severe case. The dog actually guarded the whole room, which was a big problem. So it was the whole room. Nobody can come in there. So that was some dogs really expand that area that they're guarding. So with the little dogs, and this is very common in the little dogs, if they're on the lap or whatever, and they growl, and somebody comes by and they growl. So I got to tell you, I've had a little bit of that, and they were guarding me, but I had min pins, and I had one min pin that did that, and it's like, okay, every time she bit or she growled at my husband coming by, she just ended up on the floor, and that was it. That was it. She lost her lap privileges. So you growl, you get down, you get put down on the floor. You lose that privilege. You don't get to growl at somebody else coming by. The other thing, what you can do is toss it. The person comes through, toss a treat. Even if they're growling and barking, don't worry about it. Just toss a treat. Over time, it should diminish, right?
Yeah. But one little caveat on that, right? Don't make a huge, enormous deal about it. Just put them down, right?
Right.
Oh, we don't growl at that. Don't do that, because then, right? In the dog's mind, what happens is, dad comes in, right, and then you get mad, and in the dog's frame of mind, it wasn't the growl that did that; it was dad. So it makes it worse, right? So I'm just like, too bad for you. Get off the couch, right? And then you lose that privilege as well. So, right. It's just kind of a matter-of-fact consequence. Oh, too bad. Get off.
Right. It's a consequence. It's like, tough Tonys. Yep. You lose that privilege, right? You don't want to associate anything bad. Like Joanne said, get off bed, dog, blah, 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 and start talking. And then it's like then it's going to make things much, much worse.
Yep. So. Yeah, it's really funny. We think it training, right, in terms of the human brain, dogs don't comprehend the same way. So, it's like when we talk about kind of aversion training or some of those things, a lot of times the dogs don't associate the correction, whatever it may be, with the behavior that we're trying to correct. Usually they associate it with what they're looking at, and it's causing them to create that behavior in the first place. So it's just a little shift in mindset from dogs to humans.
Right. And the other thing with toys, one of the things that contributes a lot to some of the guarding, like toys and things like that, is high arousal, right? High arousal. So if they're playing and they're running, make sure you give them frequent breaks so that they're not getting amped up, and then they start, they'll start. It's no different than children playing. After a while, one will shove one a little harder than the other, and that's when all hell breaks loose, right? So, yeah.
I'll give you the example of that. You hear me talk about the crazy Doberman. He was playing with Melanie's little young Vizsla girl, and things were going swimmingly. Everyone was having a wonderful time. And so funny. The breeder of Melanie's Beachlas and Noah as well, she gives water bottles to the puppies as really young, and so that those are kind of toys for them. So she had finished her bottle of water and just chucked it in, and as soon as Bam saw that water bottle hit, he postured. The whole world shifted. But because he was aroused and he was playing, right? Just the introduction of that thing that was viewed as a toy object, right? It was immediately I had to run in and stop play. He didn't hurt her. He didn't even growl at her, but I just saw the posture shift and we're like, you're done. Right? So who'd have thought a water bottle? For some dogs, they're like, oh yeah, we love them. For some dogs, they're like, why would I play with that? Right? But Lauren's comment to see, I've seen a dog guard shade, right? Who would think of shade as a coveted item? Who would think of water is another one, right? Why would a dog guard water? Any of those things, again, it's what is the resource that's important to the dog. Just remember that.
Right. And they determine what that is.
Right.
So, Sue, this is a great question. What's the difference between resource guarding and communicating back off, which is rule setting, really? Because there's some dogs so here's the difference. Communicating back off is a much more confident, the dog comes from a more place of confidence. So, for example, that's my ball, and the dog just looks at it, and it's like, you can't have that. Versus resource guarding, it's a very, and I think like actually they covet it, they're scrunched over, they're protecting it. It's a different look. There's an anxiety component to the resource guarding versus the rule setting communicado. So
right. Think about it this way.
It looks different.
Yep.
It would be like you can't.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought. You froze for a second. I thought you were done.
So, yeah. So you want to make sure that if it looks like it's not, there's an anxiety component to it, that's a resource guarding. If it looks like it's a more confident, like, you want that toy, you want it, you can't have it. There's a whole different look. There's a way different look on how that looks. So.
Right. So it's like, think about it this way. If you're at a store, right, and you're about to get your wallet out to pay for something, and you kind of set your purse up on the counter, right? I would expect nobody's going to run by and touch my purse. I'm not worried about it being there, right? I'm going to do my thing and put my card in and pay for my bill, right? If I'm in a loud concert, or back in the day, right, or if I'm in a really, really crowded place, I'm probably going to hold my purse under my arm a little tighter, make sure it's zipped, right? That's just coming from, I'm much more aware of what's going on around me. And I do want to make sure that I kind of protect that resource a little bit. So from a human factor, it's the same kind of concept, right? I'm not worried about my purse, but in this other situation, I'm not worried about it because I expect in the situation I'm in, nobody's going to take it, versus, I do worry about somebody's going to do it. So I'm going to hold it a little closer. I'm going to, you start to see that posture shift in the dogs and how they feel about the item.
Right. Because usually if there's a resource guarding component, there's an element of low confidence or anxiety. They really are concerned about losing that resource. Right. So yeah. But yeah, that's a really good analogy, because it really makes a lot of sense. Because it's like, that's true of us, right? It's our purse is a resource, and that's how you would handle that. So and rule setting, you see it a lot. Like when I had Cha-Cha and my two young dogs were younger puppies, she did a lot of rule setting. You can have that, you can't have that, you can have that. She still does it to some extent, but she did a lot of it when they were young. Like, that's my toy, you can't have it. And that's when you see an older dog go, gives a puppy a blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's mine. So the puppy learns don't take it. And she did a really nice job, because these guys are pretty good. When Chacha's playing with a toy, it's her toy and nobody takes it. Yeah. The only one that maybe like really is looking at it is Tango. He's like, oh, can I have it? And sometimes she'll be like, all right, you can have it. But if she really wants it, no.
I wish that the world could clone Cha-Cha, right? because she's such a jerk, but she is so good about teaching, right? Because she'll take something and she'll just put it out in the middle of the room, right? And she's still like, that's mine. Well, but I want it. She goes, do you? Go ahead, give it a try. And then, as soon as the dog approaches, she's like, I wouldn't if I were you. They're like, oh, okay, right? And they back off. It's the coolest thing to watch, but she really, really shows dogs about space and about items and how to share and how that's mine. You can't have it. Oh, if I choose to give it to you, I'm happy to, but next time I might not.
Right. And she's done a great job of teaching our young, my young two, and that's why there's really no problems with toys sharing. They're pretty good about that stuff. Like, they don't. There's usually not a big hoopla about toys here. You know what I mean? They're usually pretty like, okay, they'll wait for their turn but she did a nice job of teaching. The only one that guards here is Rizzo, but nobody wants what she has, so it's not usually a problem. It's not usually a thing because nobody wants it. And that's the difference, you guys, right? You can have a dog that maybe research guards against other dogs, but if the other dog doesn't want it, nobody cares. And it usually devalues what the dog has. If it tends to have that guarding thing, eventually, if nobody's interested or nobody wants it, you're like, okay, well, I guess that's not that important. And it loses, that toy loses that power, if you will, and it's not usually a problem.
Yep. So Judy had asked the question, my older non-confident dog has a toy and anxiously covers it or holds it in her mouth and runs around in an attempt to get the younger dog to chase after her to get it. So I'm just curious because that sentence is actually really contradictory to itself, right? If you have a really not confident dog with a toy that anxiously covets it, she's not going to try and get another dog to chase her, right?
Right.
So I think there's something missing in the read of that. So what you're talking about, growling, spinning, running, and they're it seems to me like it's trying to initiate play with a toy.
Right.
So that's what it seems like. I'm not there, but what you're describing, it doesn't seem like it's an anxious thing, right? If I'm anxious about it and I don't want you to take it, I'm not going to say, do you want it? Come get it.
Right.
It seems like more of a game of play to me.
Yes. So yeah, it's like as long as it's not coming to blows, I don't think
Right.
I think it is just an invitation to play. Some dogs, and sometimes it's better, right? If somebody, like Tango, I usually like to have something in his mouth because then it cuts down on the German takedown a little bit, so I don't have to worry about it. Well, because he grabs it and then the lab gets mad. If you have
For
a
those
dog
of you unfamiliar with what that phrase means, those of us with the German working dogs, they love to grab necks and then take down the other dog by the neck. So
which the labs find extremely offensive.
Yeah, so do the Beachless.
Yeah, the sporting dogs don't find it amusing at all.
Nope.
But if you ever see, and this goes off a little bit off topic, but if you ever see like a Doberman play, two Shepherds play, a Rottie Shepherd, a Boxer Shepherd, that's how they play. It's hilarious.
Yes.
Like, one will grab a pin, the other one. Okay, now you do it. Grab the other one. That's how they play. And again, the sporting dogs find that extremely stupid. They don't like it at all.
Right. Like,
just racing around the house forever. Me. So then Judy play. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how it goes back to that's how the sporting dogs like to play: running, chasing. So.
Yep.
Which the working dogs, shepherds and stuff don't. I mean, they'll do it, but they like the rather pinning down the other dog. That's what they find very fun. So
they don't really have good play styles with other dogs unless the only dog I have found that's not a working dog that really likes to play that way are Rhodesian Ridgebacks.
Yes, and they're hounds, so they'll go.
Yes. So.
Yeah. So, Alicia, if you have a dog that's unsure and is resource guarding, bring a new puppy could be a problem. No, Alicia, I think you would have to manage that guarding problem. And I think the dog, especially a puppy, dogs recognize that it's a puppy, not an adult. So usually you can make it work. You have to be careful that that Nazar doesn't hurt the puppy. But I think the puppy will figure it out pretty quick, right?
Well, are you talking about Alicia's dog specifically? Because I would say, yeah, it could definitely, depending on your resource guarding problem, you could absolutely have a huge problem bringing in a new puppy.
Yeah, but he does not have a huge resource guarding problem.
No, but just for everyone, right? Her situation might not, but yes, puppies are dumb, right? So if you have a dog that's serious about it, you can have a seriously injured puppy.
Yeah, right? but Nazar's not that serious about it.
Right.
He wouldn't be that way with a puppy.
No, I just meant in general, like not her story, but
yeah, because he's, he can't be away from mama, so I think it'll be fine. He couldn't take on a toad, so I think a puppy will be all right in her house.
Poor shepherd.
Yeah, well, he's a delicate flower. But yes, if a dog is serious about guarding, absolutely. You want to be real careful with that because they can hurt the puppy for sure. But Nazar, in his case, no. Because, no, he won't hurt the dog. He'll be like, oh my God. Yeah. I think he'll need a therapist after the puppy comes. So
no, that's a good description though, Alicia. Like he's not serious about it, right? No. If you really have a serious, like your dog means it and they're willing to go after another dog, yeah, don't let that puppy. I mean, you really have to manage that situation because you can seriously get an injured puppy. So
yeah. Yeah, no, he would Nazar would be totally fine. He'd be like, oh.
He barked at me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, kinda. Kinda. He barked at me. He's yelling at me. So yeah, I don't think it would be a problem. Slow introductions and all that, and going through the whole process will be fine. But I don't foresee any major issue with that. Okay, and the other issue is territory. That's a resource for the dogs. Like a yard or whatever. So here's the thing, and this is just a lot of people like have dogs come over and they play in the yard and all that. I think initially, if you do it very often, it's not a problem, but you definitely want to manage that situation. You're not going to let just rando dog, even if it's a dog he knows and he's fine outside of the house with, bring him into your yard is a whole different ball game. So you want to really think about that because it is his yard. So a lot of times I recommend when the first few times you're doing it, they meet out front, especially if dogs, they know each other, and then they walk back to the yard together. So that way one's not waiting there while the other one's coming in. So that would eliminate that issue, right? Because especially some of the dogs that are naturally bred to guard, to be territorial, it can be a big problem, even though they might be great pals at the dog shows and at the park or whatever, but it's a whole different story when they come in somebody's yard, right?
Yeah, and I would even go even farther if you wanted to be extra careful. Go for a walk around the block. You know what I mean? And just let them walk out some of that squirreliness and bless you. And get them a little tired just from the walk and then walk them into the yard together, right? Just minimizing, because remember, and again, whole other topic, right? But those transitional moments of gates and fences and doors, those are the places where bad things happen, fights happen, So if your dog has a tendency that letting that other dog in, and I'll tell you guys, think about it. Think about the dog park. Where does everybody get the craziest at the dog park? New dog, right? And they all rush the gate and want to see who's coming, and it's very intimidating.
Right. And that's usually where you get some of the drama when they first come in, right?
Yep.
And that's why coming in, for example, when I come in and I have one dog and the other two are home, I don't have the other dogs come to the door. I have them somewhere else. I have my husband put them somewhere else, and I come in with that dog and then I let them together. I just don't set it up where there's a lot of excitement and drama and all that around the doors. I just don't do it because I have two shepherds, a lab, and I have two little ones that in the mix that could just be a huge problem. So any other questions about resource guarding? Because this is a really, and the other thing is, one of the big problems with resource guarding is people take personal offense to it. How could he bite me? I feed him and I take care of him and I love him. There's nothing, I think that's why it becomes such a difficult thing, because people are like, he's got to be okay with me. He's got to, you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm his mom. He can't be biting me or growling or whatever. Instead of just taking it for what it's worth and just working the problem, right? And people with children, it just gets a little more complicated because then there's more people in the mix. But it's a very emotionally charged behavior problem of all the problems. That is a huge one. It's very upsetting to people, and in my experience has been very, very, people just, they take it so personally, the resource guarding, that it's a difficult thing.
Yeah. And not only do people take it personally, but I feel like this is the one thing where people know it's an issue, but they seem to wait, like, oh, we can fix it, or we can do right. And people wait until the dog actually has a bite or a big outburst before they seek help. And just remember, this is one of those things where if you think you have it, get your dog assessed by a trainer, that's going to work on it with you, because the sooner that you can start, working through this, the better it's going to be. The longer it goes on, I think, at least
yes,
in my opinion, the dogs that have, lost their lives due to this, it's not like it just came on, right? How long have you been dealing with this? Oh, 6 months, sometimes longer. The dogs bit us 3 times already. Yeah. And guess what? Every time he bites you, you back off. And so he learns, right? And we hate to think of it that way, because he might love you very, very much. But if food or a toy or a resource is that important to him that he feels the need to protect it that much to bite you, he's going to keep doing it, especially if it worked for him.
Yeah. And the truth is, it's one of those things, when in all my cases that have been the biggest, that hadn't worked out, the dog had been resource guarding for years, not just months. Years. They have been bitten, and years of dog biting and going after, years of it. So fixing that is hard. That's why if you see it as a young puppy, or just take care of it when they're young puppies, life is much easier that way.
I'll let you take Mary's, because I know you know the 2 boxers really well.
I walked Oscar and Vinny on a brace when they were younger. They would jockey for lead position, which would lead to a fight. That's not resource guarding. That's ranking. They're trying to, yeah, no, that wasn't resource guarding. Trust me on that. That was strictly, one was trying to be, the top dog, and they were vying for position. That wasn't resource guarding. So.
Yeah. And, Sarah, for you're talking about your border collie resource guards food and toys from your Chihuahua, but he's vocal and growls or grumbles. I don't know that that's just her then, right? I mean, I would really get that kind of assessed. Who's guarding what? Is it really the border collie? Is it Muffet that's resource guarding, or is he maybe resource guarding and she's kind of stepping in to say, don't do that, right? Unfortunately, the rule following running at the pool herding breeds like border collies. You know what I mean? They sometimes are like, stop growling. You don't get to do that.
Yes.
So, I would really maybe get that looked at to make sure that.
See who's doing what.
Right.
Because sometimes things look like it's the problem of one dog and it's really the other. Border police. Yeah, it's like, don't do that. Just, like the shepherd's sent to do that too. But he's vocal, growls, and she goes after him. So the Chihuahua's the female?
No, the Chihuahua's the male.
Okay. So she's the guarder. So, but she really, so the Chihuahua's the male and the border collie is the female.
Yeah. So if he's growling and grumbling for something too, like what, you might have both of them, might be a little bit guardy around food or toys,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, and
So
that's
one of the things. Go ahead.
so
Go ahead.
one of the biggest things I want to mention here, and whether Sarah or anybody, and I know Nancy, this is near and dear to your heart. When you have tiny dogs, right, 10 pounds and under, like you guys, I mean, you really be very, very careful about that, because it doesn't take much to seriously damage a little dog, right? And Sarah, not necessarily you, I know you're saying she's never done any damage, but just to the general public, if you have a 30-pound dog and a 10-pound dog, it does not take much for that 10-pound dog to be seriously, life-threateningly injured, even if it's just, I knocked you out of the way or I stepped on you.
Right. So Sarah, one of the things you can do is have happy time, or they can have toy time, but they would be tethered. Like if you can do a living room or whatever, one would be on one end, tethered to a thing, and they can play with toys and all that, but they can't get to each other. So that way they have a pleasurable experience, several pleasurable experiences around toys. So you can have a Kong or whatever, which is a toy with food, right? And they can have that until it's, yeah. So you can set those trainings up, right? One would be here, one would be in the other, and in the same room, but they would be tethered so they can't get to each other. And and you could make sure they're comfortable, give them something to do while you watch TV, and in a safe, structured environment, and then do those on a regular basis so that good things happen when they're together, especially if they're separated now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. And I think even the tethering, like, just so we're not thinking we have to like drill holes in the wall, right? If you have a Chihuahua, you can potentially shut that leash in a door, right? And that can be his kind of tether,
or under a sofa leg or something.
Yep, sofa leg with a leash. You just want to make sure that they cannot get to each other.
Right. Don't put on something light that they can drag across the room either, because
then they'll scare themselves when they knock it over, and you'll damage furniture in your house. So
right. But just you can set those up. And yeah, Kim, some of the little dogs have to be protected from themselves, because wow.
It's a wonder Rizzo hasn't died yet, but
Yes, she has gone after both my shepherds and about things, but luckily they're like, okay, you're crazy. But yes, sometimes they have to be. So Sarah, you can set up where they can have, especially if they're living separately now, setting up those good structured time together is probably is a good thing, right? Or even if you have like an X pen, you could put the Chihuahua in and put the border collie, and then they can have their time together in a more structured, safer manner, and it'll kind of help calm things down a little bit, and have them be in a good good time to get when they're together. It's a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's very difficult to live in a separate house. It really is. I've been there, done that. So
I'm doing it currently. Yeah. So
all right, all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're looking forward to more topics, but resource guarding is near and dear. And those of you who have young puppies, I know a couple of you have, just do all the stuff, put toys, treats in and all that. And I promise you won't have a problem. Life will be easier, and you just won't have to deal with it. It's very easy. All right, guys. Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Oh, thanks, Sarah.
Oh. Bye.
Bye, guys.